This is 41, the 41st Quarantiki, live Quarantiki broadcast from Lovecraft Cocktails. Wow. So came up with I was reading a book today, and as I was reading that book, I went, huh, that's an interesting thing. Maybe I should make that the focus of tonight's Quarantiki, and then madly scribbling things down in the last hour or so. Try and put all this together. We'll see how it comes out. We'll start this off with, so what have you learned this week? Well, I've learned a lot of things, but only a few of them are actually related to cocktails and tiki and that sort of thing. One of them is, I always presumed that taking down a block of ice that you have used directional freezing on in order to get at least some portion of it into clear ice, that I always assumed that that was a kind of a pain in the neck. And so basically, when I would do this directional freezing and get these nice squares of ice that were crystal clear, and I love them, they're great, but I didn't want to use them for anything except dropping directly into liquor glass, fine quality spirits straight. So I was left with these large blocks of ice, and usually I would use those for punches. I would just drop them in a big punch bowl, and they're huge blocks of ice. Huge, okay, for home bar, they're like this.
They're great for punch bowls.
But what I discovered...
Because we usually at the party have one in the punch bowl and one in the water pitcher.
Right, right. And what I discovered today was that, I mean, I knew all the techniques for breaking down an ice block, but it always seemed like it was too much effort. But for whatever reason, I decided I'm going to give it a try today. And I took one of the party ice blocks that I had.
First, you watched like 500 YouTubes.
Right, and they were all saying the same thing. So I took down this big old ice block in, 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
It didn't take very long at all. It was pretty easy. There was no pain, there was no agony, there was no shouting, there was no blood. So, it was all good. And I was able to get more so the block, because it's directional in its freeze, some portion of the block still has impurities in it and is cloudy ice, but other pieces are pretty clear. So I was able to get more of the clear ice off of that block, and I have some irregular large chunks of the impure ice, which is still clearer than my usual freezer ice. And so now I have larger rocks that are not clear that I can use for shaking. And I used to not have that, and I used to not want to use, well, I still don't want to use my crystal clear cubes for shaking because I want to save them for sipping. So now I have chunks of ice that I can actually do that with. So I'm just terribly excited about that. So what I learned was, dude, just suck up and do it. It really doesn't take that long, and it gives you a fair amount of ice. And okay, so there we go. I learned that. So what is next? You have chosen the Real McCoy, aged 10 years. This is a limited release. It is 92 proof, and this is my preferred of the 3 Real McCoys that I have, because I have the 3-year white rum, I have the 12-year, and I have the 10-year. And the 10-year is actually a really interesting blend of their 10-year rums and some 15 and other year rums, whereas their 12-year rum is straight 12-year. And as a consequence, this has to be labeled, because it's coming from Foursquare Distillery and they're honest about things, they're 10-year, because the youngest rum in here is 10 years, and so that's what they do. And their 12-year is aged 12 years, it's the youngest rum in there. It's also, to the best of my knowledge, the only rum that is in there. But this sucker has 15-year-old rum in it, and in a nice blended proportion that I think makes the 10-year a much better rum than the, I mean, not much better, but a better rum than the 12-year. A toast.
A toast.
To toastiness. No, to, I don't know. There's got to be a toast, something to toast. To the first Sunday in regular time.
Yeah.
How's that? That's the Catholic in me coming out. To the first Sunday of regular time, yes. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's good, because we don't delve into politics here, or at least I try not to anymore.
Oh, that's yummy.
Yeah, this is, I know it's going to be good, and I'm just like, oh, it's going to be yummy. What else did I learn? I learned how to stop the King in Yellow from emerging into our world. Yes, I received, last week, I received a mysterious crate from the Mysterious Package Company. That is the Hastur crate, and that crate comes with a whole bunch of just cool stuff that is puzzle and just cryptic, trying to figure out what's going on, and has some awesome statuary and the celestial map that you have these little stone pieces that you have to place in particular ways based upon the clues that they give you. And it was awesome. We spent, a couple hours a day for a couple days probably trying to do this puzzle and finally getting through it, and it was very cool. So Mysterious Package Company, I've now received 2 packages from them. They're very awesome. They are a little on the pricey side. They are, a couple $100s, but particularly the Hastur package was so worth it. It was so much fun. If you know me, you know I'm a big Godzilla fan. I like King Kong, but I'm a huge Godzilla fan. So yeah, I'm totally looking forward to that movie dropping. That will be so much fun. Yesterday and today I was reading a book that my lovely bride got me for Christmas. And this book completes the 2-volume set of Punch and Imbibe from David Wondrich. And this is Imbibe. This is what it looks like. Right. And this is, sort of the history of cocktailing, starting with the professor, Jerry Thomas, and his book, which I have a copy of Jerry Thomas's. I have one of the El Cheapo prints of Jerry Thomas's book somewhere down here in my library. As you go through Jerry Thomas's book, not David Wondrich's, Jerry Thomas's book, you are struck by the fact that everything is written down in measurements that make no sense to us today, which is why partially we are so indebted to guys like David Wondrich, who have taken the time to figure out what the heck these measurements were. There was also, of course, a total lack of standardization in the early days of mixology and bartending, and so consequently you can kind of hedge around on some of these. But this history is awesome. I'm loving it. Going through and talking about the early bartenders and the early stages of cocktails in like the 1800s, and so long before Prohibition, and what cocktailing looked like before the Prohibition era. And as we go through, there was a long period of time, almost 200 years, it certainly predates the founding of our country, where what cocktailing really meant punches. And by punches, we mean large format punch bowls with water, sugar, fruits, lots of alcohol in them, and sometimes even communal bowls. Well, almost always a communal bowl, but they would be like at taverns would have a communal bowl, and everybody would be drinking out of that bowl. For parties and the like, they would have multiple punches out, and it was considered rude and déclassé to leave the party if the punch bowls were still had drink in them. So that contributed to the early days of being schnockered. But in the 1830s, 1840s, I may be slightly off on my dates here, predating the U.S. Civil War, the punches start to be scaled down to individual drinks. And those drinks went by a whole bunch of different names, but as individual punches, these were still a sort of large format because they were large goblets. As I was reading through some of the recipes for these single-serving punches, I was struck by just how similar some of these seem to the kinds of drinks that we put together for tiki. And as a consequence, we're going to go through a couple of those cocktails, and then we're going to do a very, very modern tiki cocktail. But I just want to show you that, we tend to think of tiki as coming out of that holy trinity of the Caribbean, the sugar or cane syrup, the lime juice, and rum. But, not everything is a play off the daiquiri, and it goes back long before just the daiquiri. So, yeah, did we really think tiki started with Don the Beachcomber? There we go. These names, wait. The King in Yellow just appeared over here. I mentioned that there was a map in the package, and you had to place little stone icons on the map, and that would give you information about how to solve the riddles. So here is one of the little stone icons on there. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's inlay on there, and if you roll that over a like soft substance or something, a picture is revealed that gives you clues to the mystery that is Hastur. There's a distressed parchment that comes with it that provides you with some level of instruction on what to do. You know, as the distant one does pull apart the heavens, so do we take apart the dial of the moon. We do nothing more until every piece is separated 8 from 8, then we do turn them over. Thus we reverse the pieces of the ring, Lune to rune, moon to realm, and now it is time to find a new order and build the dial anew. So you get these really kind of spacey, cool, occultish sounding instructions that make no sense to you until you get into the puzzle and start trying to figure things out. And of course, you know, it's Mysterious Package Company, so this is the kind of thing that shows up in Mysterious Package Company. This is a heavy piece of stone with you know, iconography on the back that means something to figuring out the mystery. And of course, this piece is going to go with my seated Cthulhu piece and be part of the bar decor down here. So the next time people are descending into my basement bar, there will be both Hastur and Cthulhu staring at you as my invitation.
Did you show that?
So the whole mystery starts with you receiving an invitation to an event, and the event is a play called The King in Yellow that has a sordid history of driving people insane that go to this particular play. So yeah, it's so much fun. We had so much fun doing it, and now I need rum because, you know, I'm a little weirded out by the fact that Hastur just showed up over here to my right. Guessing my wife had something to do with that, but you know, who knows? She went through the puzzle with me. She might be insane. I don't know. I might be insane. We both might be. No, we're fine. We're good. We're good. Although we don't have a drink in front of us, so that's bad. The first drink that we're going to do is in fact a punch, a large format punch. But what we're going to do is, it is a warm cocktail, a warm punch. It is akin to a hot toddy, but there are some differences in it. And so I'm going to heat up some water here, and we're going to make that in front of you. So the instructions for this cocktail say to take a half lemon squeezed, a wine glass of brandy, a half wine glass of Jamaican rum, and a wine glass of orgeat, and mix these together in a mug, pour hot water over them, stir, garnish, and serve, often with fruit added to the top of it. This is actually called General Burnside's Favorite. That's the name of this particular punch, and yes, it is named after General Ambrose Burnside, who has a, I wouldn't say an illustrious history, Battle of Fredericksburg, Civil War, that sort of thing. So obviously the drink postdates the Civil War. But we're going to heat some water up here. But as you note, the directions I gave call for a wine glass of this and a wine glass of that. What is the measure of a wine glass? We know that there are like dozens, if not hundreds, of different sizes of wine glass. And we're pretty sure that the instructions did not mean, you know, one of these great big red wine goblets, because you'd never be able to fit all of that in a mug. So what did they mean? And David Wondrich went through the history and dug through the archives and found, you know, glassware from that period and various writings from that period to figure out what measures they were using, or at least an approximation, and then did some experimentation to figure out what worked and what didn't work. So what this drink actually works out to be is about a ½ ounce of lemon juice. A wine glass of brandy turns out to be about 1½ ounces. A half wine glass of Jamaican rum, therefore, is 3/4 of an ounce, and it all flows from there. So you might be thinking, wait a second, an entire wine glass is only 1½ ounces? Look, glasses were smaller back then. In general, most of the punch recipes were mixed in the goblet or glass that they were going to be served in, and they were poured back and forth. We're not going to do that, because that creates a mess. and it sort of predates the original kind of cocktail shaker where the glass that you're going to serve it in is actually part of the cocktail shaker. Nowadays, modern cocktailing, we don't do that. The cocktail shaker is its own thing, and you don't serve in the glass that you use for shaking. You'd serve that over clear ice, or over fresh ice, that sort of thing. And we're going to do that with other cocktails. I can hear the water. It's getting ready to boil. So I might as well start with putting the other ingredients in, because that's going to work just fine. So we're going to use this guy as a mug. He's got a handle on him, right there. See him? He's kind of cute. This will keep my baby's fingers from getting burned by this. We are going to go 1/2 ounce lemon juice. 1/2 ounce lemon juice. And we are actually going to build this right in the mug, which is, pretty common for a toddy. You may have noticed I poured out water from the mug. That's because I had put hot water in here previously to warm up the mug. So we need 1.5 ounces of brandy. Most of these punch recipes require brandy as their base, and usually that is specified by Mr. Wondrich as cognac. We are not going to be using cognac for this. We're going to be using a local brand. We're going to be using Catoctin Creek 1757 Distillers Reserve Virginia brandy, because I can. And it's here, and it's from a recipe from 1757. So we're hoping that it's at least semi-historical for our purposes here. Okay, so what did I say? 1.5 ounces, right? Let's go in there. 1/2 wine glass Jamaican rum. I'm going to go ahead and go with something that's got a little kick to it. So we're going to use the Smith & Cross Jamaican rum. This is overproof at 57%. 3/4 ounce of this. There we go. Nicely in there. And then we need 1/2 ounce of orgeat. Or some people are pronouncing it orgeat or orgeat. Orgeat. Brand new bottle orgeat. Made it this week. Right? As I was noticing similarities between various tiki drinks and these very early cocktails. So you'll note we almost always refer to orgeat or orgeat as a tiki cocktail ingredient. This is a drink that dates from the 1870s. That's 50 at least, if not 60 or 70 years prior to tiki even being a glimmer in anybody's eye. So when did tiki begin? Well, I don't know, because we were using tiki ingredients as far back as the 1850s, 1860s, 1870s. So, I mean, this is not an unusual beginning for some kind of tiki drink, although, this is more of a toddy-esque thing, but that doesn't mean that it's not tiki. This would be the hot water. You know how I can tell? Steam! Steam. All right, so this goes in here. I don't have a good garnish for this, other than the traditional, hey, it's a toddy, so we're going to use a cinnamon stick. We're going to drop that just right in there. And I am going to reach over and grab a lemon and a channel knife. Channel knife. Ta-da, channel knife. And we are going to do a pull here. And so we just have a twisted piece of lemon. That's going to go expressed over that. We're going to stick that in there. Get a pair of tweezers. Stir that around. And there you go. This is the General Burnside's favorite. This is very hot, hun, and the tiki mug conducts heat really well. So despite my best efforts to keep you from burning your hands, that's really hot.
It is really hot.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach over here and I'm going to grab a paper towel. We're going to fold this paper towel like such, and then we're just going to wrap that around here. You'll want to grab it like up there.
Okay.
Got it?
Yep.
There you go. You might want a straw for that, I think. Otherwise, you're going to burn your lips on the side of that. So this is commemorating a bad Civil War general, but apparently is a wonderful cocktail, according to the powers that be from the 1870s. So I'm going to stand here and take a look at my wife, who's going to take a sip from this and burn her lips on it, and we'll see how what she thinks of it.
Yummy.
That's yummy. That'll work as a toddy. That will soothe the post-nasal drip. Excellent. See, I take care of my wife here on this show. Ta-da! So, all right, so...
Oh.
What?
So, I have to tell my blowfish joke.
Oh, okay.
So...
There's a smut shop.
There's a smut shop. It's no longer. It closed in...
There was a smut shop.
There was a smut shop in San Francisco, and mostly online, called Blowfish, which my friend worked at, and thus the name that I suggested for the Blowfish. But I had a shirt said Blowfish, guaranteed not to suck, which is their slogan. And I would wear it to work. And I was at a meeting and someone said, "You can't wear that shirt to work." And I went, "Why not?"
Oh, that's pleasant.
Because it doesn't say anywhere on the shirt
what it
advertised. And then they realized that by calling me on the shirt, they let me know that they knew what the shop was.
They patronized said shop.
Yes, and they turned bright red.
I'm assuming at some point you probably had a conversation with that person later about, that shop and that sort of thing, right?
Thus.
Oh, that is quite delightful.
Yeah.
You could vary the amount of hot water. You could use hot tea instead. I don't think coffee would work. It would overpower it. But certainly a tea would be quite nice. So hot punches were a thing. You could go into any tavern and get yourself a hot punch. And since it is winter, seems like a thing, right? Let's do a hot punch. All right, so tiki ingredient, fresh citrus juices. Winter, yeah, it is winter here. Citrus juices, an almond syrup or almond extracted syrup. These are things that we usually associate mostly with high-quality craft cocktails and with tiki in more specific, but they were doing them in the 1860s and 1870s. So,
can you show off your channel knife?
Can I show off my channel knife? I certainly can. This is my channel knife. I can even walk around if you wish to see it. I'll bring it a little closer. So how you use the channel knife. The channel knife has a channel in it right here that has a sharp edge. And you can either pull the fruit this way or this way, as you just saw me do. Just pulling the fruit, or pulling the knife along the outer skin of the fruit, and it forms these wonderful little strips. You can see the strips on the lemon. The other thing you can do is you can use this to decorate. So you could like pull a couple of more strips of this, put some stripes on it, do a crosshatch pattern, cut it in half, and use that as a garnish for like fish or something. It would be really pretty. So channel knives have other uses besides just cocktails, but I've got one for the downstairs bar and one for the upstairs bar, and when I travel I just grab one of those two and throw them in my travel case. So that I'm pretty sure, do not quote me on this, but I believe the cutting edge of this is so small that it will in fact pass TSA. So I think you can take this on a plane, I'm not sure. There is a recipe for a single serving punch dating back to the mid to later 1800s that certainly seems like it has some things in common with tiki. In particular, we're using a rum and we're pairing it with another spirit. So that whole thing about pairing multiple rums together or pairing rums with other spirits, apparently that was a thing. And using citrus and using orgeat was also a thing. So, I mean, that seems really pretty straightforward that maybe tiki has its origins a little further back than we thought.
We have more names.
We have more names.
Beauregard Belafonte Blowfish.
Belafonte. I think we need the Stacy in there, though. I mean, Beauregard Belafonte Stacy.
Stavro Blowfish. From Dana.
Yeah.
Hi, Dana and Ross.
Somebody knows I also like 007. Yeah, okay.
And Beauregard.
Oh, can I do Beauregard with that same kind of Beauregard accent? Beauregard. I suppose I could. Beauregard. Looking at the ingredients, putting them together, and you have that same pattern of sweet, sour, and spirit with some dilution, the hot water, which sounds an awful lot like, you know, a punch recipe, a tropical punch recipe. 1 sour, 2 sweet, 3 strong, 4 weak. So the proportions aren't quite right. You can't see that. It's all blurry. But those are the buttons that I do not have on my shirt at the moment. There we go. It's one of these guys. Wow, that got fuzzy. I think it's because you're drinking while I'm talking. That's what it is. Yeah, that's why I'm fuzzy. It has nothing to do... Okay, maybe it has everything to do with the focus of the camera. There we go. Ta-da! Back in focus. A second cocktail from last week, I was experimenting around with an ingredient called Fashionola, which shows up in relatively few tiki cocktails, but when it does, it's like the sought-after, mysterious ingredient that everybody is looking for that adds just this right touch of something to the cocktail. It has been described as citrusy and tart and raspberry-like, and as a consequence, one of the workarounds for that is grenadine, homemade grenadine, so the tartness of the pomegranate, mixed with raspberry syrup. So, you know, I'm going through and I'm looking at recipes from Imbibe, again, so we're talking late 1800s, and there's a number of recipes in there that call for berries, in particular raspberries, which got me to thinking. It's like, well, what if I substituted Fashionola for the raspberry or the raspberry syrup that's there? Do we begin to look more like a tiki cocktail? And lo and behold, there is a cocktail right around the same period as General Burnside's favorite, is the National Guard 7th Regiment Punch. Now, the 7th Regiment is what the National Guard used to be known as, because it used to only be the National Guard of New York. And so the 7th Regiment was the nomenclature for the National Guard, the entirety of the National Guard. Obviously, each state now has its own National Guard and blah, 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 details. But I thought that would also be inappropriate given the events of the last few weeks, that we should pull a historical recipe that references the National Guard and see what that looks like in a tiki sense. So here's the recipe. 1 tablespoon of sugar, and this would have been a fine sugar. They would have clipped it off or filed it off of a cone of hard sugar, so very fine. They would have shaved it, and it would have been very fine sugar, so that it mixes very well. The juice of a quarter of a lemon, a wine glass of brandy. Here we're back to the wine glass as a measure. 1 wine glass of Katamba wine. I have no idea what Katamba wine is. David doesn't actually tell me what Katamba wine is, but he does note that in the revised edition, Jerry Thomas's book, they substituted, instead of the Katamba wine, they substituted sherry. So we're going to do that. And then the last ingredient was a teaspoon of raspberry syrup, which at the time would have just been a simple syrup that had been infused with crushed or macerated raspberries. Or it could have been like an oleo saccharum, where you would have taken the raspberries, dumped a bunch of sugar in with them, and just let it sit. And of course the sugar will just suck the water and juice right out of the raspberries, and it'll form a thick syrupy liquid. For that, we're going to switch and we're going to use Fashionola. Once again, there's the sweet and the tart or sour, and then you've got a combination of spirits, and then you've got some kind of bizarro out there ingredient, whether that's a spice, something like a fertilernum or an orgeat, or in this case the raspberry syrup, which we're going to substitute Fashionola. So what I'm going to do is take that recipe. Everything in the punch recipes seem to call for brandy, aside from some very specific gins, which would have been Genevieve at the time, and that's just a thing. But in any case, almost all of them seem to call for brandy. And brandy was really big in the States at the time, and so it was kind of the default for punches. But what we're going to do is we're going to not do everything with brandy. So we're going to use rum, and then we're going to pair a couple of rums together, and we're going to do a variation of the National Guard 7th Regiment punch, but we're going to do it Tikified. So once again, this would have been a cocktail that what they would have done is they would have taken the glass that they would serve it in, and then they would have taken another glass, and they would have put ice and the ingredients in them, and they would have passed them back and forth between the two of them in order to aerate them and to mix the ingredients. Later, they would do the more familiar putting the cocktail shaker together and shaking it, and then they would break it apart and serve in one of those glasses. Modern cocktail sensibilities suggest that we build in the cocktail shaker, and then we strain that over clear ice, and that is, or clean ice, and that is what we are going to do for the Tikified version of the 7th Regiment National Guard punch. National Guard 7th Regiment punch. All right, so what are we going to do? We are going to go with, instead of 1 tablespoon of sugar, Dave recommends paring that back to 2 teaspoons. So we are going to do 2 teaspoons of syrup, and I am going to use the spiced syrup. So we think, here is a cocktail from the late 1800s, and I'm going to make this into a tiki cocktail. How's that? There we go. There's 2 teaspoons of this wonderful spiced syrup. And again, for those of you that are just tuning in or haven't seen previously, so my spice syrup is a base recipe that starts with a 2-to-1 sugar to water ratio. Yeah, I use a combination of demerara and white sugar, but the spices that go in include some Jamaican allspice, some cardamom, some cinnamon, cloves, star anise, probably 2 or 3 others that I'm missing, and I bring that up to temperature, make sure that the syrup is clear, all the spices are in it as it's warming. I just put a lid on it, I let it sit overnight, and it just steeps and steeps and steeps, and the spices really come out, and it just adds an amazing flavor to the cocktails. So that's what we're starting with. Instead of just a clean sugar, we're going to go ahead and do the 2 teaspoons of the spiced syrup. Half-ounce lime juice. Now the original recipe, if you've been following closely along, said lemon juice. The lemon juice pairs well with brandy. I don't find that lemon juice pairs quite as well with the rum, and since we're replacing the brandy with rum, it makes sense to switch over to lime juice. A half-ounce of lime juice. Is this cool? Are you finding this interesting at all? The whole concept that here are these drinks from the late 1800s that, with just a minor tweak, really look like a tiki cocktail. So I think it's interesting. I think it's kind of cool. Hopefully you do too. 2 ounces of rum. Now originally this would have been 2 ounces of brandy, but I'm going to go with a Bajan rum. I don't want anything that's got too much funk on it, but I want the complexities that you would normally be associate with high-level brandy or cognac. And so what I'm going to do is, this is also an experiment, right? So I'm not going to break out the really good stuff for it, but we are going to use RL Seals. This is coming out of Foursquare. This is named after the master distiller at Foursquare Distillery. It's a really good rum at its price point, which is a really pretty low. Okay, what did I say? I didn't tell you how much. 2 ounces. 2 full ounces of Bajan rum. This would have been 2 ounces of brandy. Instead, we get 2 ounces of really high quality rum, or really good rum for its price point. All right, so there's the RL Seal rum. The Bajan rums generally are a mixture of pot and column still, so there's a little bit of funk to them, but they're not known for the massive dunder. They're not known for the massive hogo. We're going to add sherry to that. Yes, my dear, my love.
Bajan rum?
I'm sorry, Bajan rum would be rum from Barbados. The Bajan people are from Barbados. as opposed to Barbadian or something else along those lines. Bayesian, yes. Yeah, I'm trying to train myself to that because I've been calling it Barbadian or Barbados rum, and they refer to it as Bayesian, so I'm going to try to refer to it as Bayesian. See? Look at me, I'm trying to learn and be good. Sherry. I don't stock a lot of sherries. In fact, I only have one, and so we're going to go ahead and use that one. It's a cream sherry, so I use this for just one of the classic tiki drinks that I'm totally blanking on that requires sherry as a float. So I keep this bottle of sherry on hand, and that's what we're going to use here. That's 1 ounce. Nope, full 2 ounces of sherry. Wow. The original recipe says raspberry syrup to flavor. Thanks, Cherry. That's helpful. You know, what is that? I mean, does it mean that it should taste like raspberry and all of everything else is a side note, or are you just adding a hint of raspberry to it? Well, Dave Wondrich, in all his joyous tracking down, says, you know, it's probably just a hint of the raspberry. You don't want it to overpower the cocktail, and so, of course, we're only doing a single teaspoon of the fashionella. I cannot remember. Did I have... I don't think I had Jonathan English's fashionella last week. I was using the workaround of the grenadine and raspberry syrup. And I liked the results of that so much that I wanted to see if I could get my hands on actual fashionella. And everybody seems to indicate that Jonathan English's fashionella is the right stuff. It has a little bit of that berry flavor to it. There's a little tart cherry. If any of you are old enough to remember Hawaiian Punch, there's certainly some reminiscences. It tastes like Hawaiian Punch, is what I'm trying to say, a little bit. Not quite, but certainly there's some hints of that in here. So Jonathan English fashionella. The Atomic Grog website says, you know, if you see this on eBay, get it. I'm like, oh, okay. It wasn't that expensive. And now I have a bottle of fashionella. And at the levels that I'm using it, a teaspoon here, a teaspoon there, an ounce here, an ounce there, that bottle should last me quite a while. So there we go. Oh, and there's a link to it in the comments. How awesome. All right, so that's it. That's all that goes in here. It's this icky, brown, yucky color. All right, we are going to add some ice to that. And we are going to shake it up. Remember when I said that I had been messing around with ice earlier today? And I was pulling some ice chunks off of the big block. So here is one of those chunks. I don't know if you can see this or not. There's some occlusions down at the bottom. And this upper here is really very, very clear. I'll hand that to the wife and she can show you. And that's pretty typical of directional freezing, where impurities are all forced down into the bottom of the ice or the top, depending upon how you're doing the freezing. And so I would not put this ice cube in, you know, this rock in a glass with a spirit, just because it's not crystal clear, right? And you want to go for image. And here's another one that you can see where there's definitely some impurities in it. The impurities, for the most part, are things like air getting trapped in the ice. So it's not like we're talking radioactive impurities or something else. So I'm going to throw some crushed ice in there, a couple of big agitator cubes. But now, I'm perfectly willing to use those cubes, because they're not crystal clear, but they're still kind of awesome, because they're not all in one great big block. So I'm going to go ahead and shake this. You could also do this in a blender. Dave talks about using a blender to do this. I'm sorry, it's not Dave, it's Mr. Wondrich. I don't know the man, and he's like a god to cocktail history, so Mr. Wondrich, how is it? I'm gonna shake this up. And then we're gonna find a glass to pour this in. And, you know, again, modern cocktailing would generally argue against just dumping this into a glass with the quote-unquote dirty ice. And so we're going to follow along with that. We're going to take a double rocks glass. This is my Mai Tai or Dai glass. We're going to put some crushed ice in that. Here's some crushed ice, and then we are going to strain that. And lo and behold, the magic of Fashionola, we get a significantly redder cocktail than what it looked like originally. And then we're going to top that with a little more crushed ice. There we go. And what should we garnish this with? How about just a couple of pieces of orange just dropped in there like that. It's a swizzle stick from one of the coolest tiki bars. I mean, there's a lot of tiki bars in San Francisco, but this is one of the coolest. They did it right. This is Zombie Village. Swizzle stick from Zombie Village. Yep. It's like a little tribal spear kind of thing. So that's going to go in there. And then we're going to stick a straw in that. So have you seen these? I think I've shown these, right? So here is Mr. Octopus sitting on the end of this bright blue straw. By Surfside Sips, of course. And if you would like a straw like this one or some other color that's got a friendly octopus on it, you too can get this straw. And you can get that straw at 20% off by using the savings code LOVECRAFT, all capital letters. Just go to Surfside Sips, tell them Lovecraft Cocktails sent you, type in that code, and they'll take care of you. And yes, we get some minor, tiny little amount of a kickback, but the great thing about that kickback is it allows us to have cool-looking straws like this. So yeah, it helps us. All right, so there we go. I have no name for this cocktail, but there are name suggestions, and we'll work on it. Oh, that's lovely. But I'm reminded as I take a sip from this that there is a final instruction to putting this cocktail together. And that says garnish with a couple of dashes of Jamaican rum. I'll just stick a thumb over that. A couple dashes there. Little Ray and Nephew. I think that's going to affect mostly the aromatics than anything else. Take a whiff of that. While I finish off the Remocola.
Oh, that's yummy.
Yeah, so again, here we have a recipe from the 1870s. We made a couple of minor changes to it, but not a whole lot of changes. And this would pass as a tiki cocktail in any tiki bar anywhere.
Yeah.
Once again, did tiki start in the 1930s? Or did tiki have its origins a little earlier?
1800s, late 1800s?
Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, yes, the cocktails may have their origins a little earlier, because all cocktails come from sort of the same origins. But do you
want to taste before this disappears?
No, I would like some of that, because, you know, do we even have any left in here? Nope, not really.
Okay.
Nope.
I'll leave it up here for a little bit, then I'll come back and get it.
Yep. Don't you still have some of your hot toddy thing left? No? No, she doesn't. See? I talked too much. It took too long in between making cocktails. Easily you could play with different rums to alter the... But I don't know why you would. That was really yummy. I have to keep that. That's good. Wow.
We have an old man question.
Old man question. I'm guessing it's coming from David.
Are there any tiki bars that are quiet enough to enjoy a conversation? The huts at Zombie Village.
A, yes, here, you know, Lovecraft Cocktails, of course, which brings to mind the fact that it's way too quiet in here. We don't have any tiki music playing. Oh, wow. So tiki bars were originally intended as being an escape. Get away from the hustle and bustle. And a lot of the good ones still emphasize that escape essence of them. And so most of them have like quiet corners or cubicles that you can go off into. And some of it is knowing when to go to the tiki bar. Here's my take on a couple of tiki bars. Three Dots and a Dash is a fantastic tiki bar in Chicago. down by the waterfront. They do a remarkably good job with their cocktails. They spawned another tiki mecca called Lost Lake, also in Chicago, and they do a fantastic job. But knowing when to go is key in order to get a table and to have some peace and quiet. Because if you go later in the evening, especially on like a Friday or a Saturday evening, there will be a lot of the younger crowd there. The music will change over from being almost a pure exotica to other things, and the volume will be amped up on the music so that it can be heard over the murmur of the crowd. And so as a consequence, if what you're looking for is a quiet environment, Friday or Saturday night at some place like Three Dots and a Dash is maybe not where you would want to go. You would want to find some other locale. Zombie Village does a really good job of this. We went to Zombie Village. We've only been the one time. We went to Zombie Village like as they opened one evening. And
we had a reservation for a hut.
Right. They also have, so there's the main bar on the first floor, and that main bar, so there's main bar, pass through, and then there's a series of cabanas or huts along that wall, and each one of those is sort of a self-contained little restaurant, and there you can hear the music from outside, but it's nice and it's cozy, and you can have a conversation, and you're not running into the hubbub of everybody else around you. The third bar that I will say would be Archipelago in DC. Archipelago is in a main thoroughfare for drinking establishments, and as a consequence, on the typical drinking nights, Archipelago can be very packed and very loud and very noisy, and again has the can I get a table? I don't want to have to stand the entire time I'm there. But if you go early in the evening, or if you go on a non-Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, if you go in the afternoon, let's say on a Sunday, the climate is very, very different. It is quiet, it is cozy, you can have a conversation with your bartender. But here's a trick. Archipelago also has an upstairs room that is reservation only, and that is almost always delightfully quiet, except with the sounds of exotica music playing through, and you can hold a conversation with your server or the bartender. If you want, you can extend the conversation to the next table over, but you have to make the effort to do that, and it's not like you're hearing everybody else's conversation. So yes, the trick is knowing when to go and where to be at the bars. Now, someplace like Smuggler's Cove is a madhouse.
During the week downstairs, it's quieter.
It is, but I mean, it's still kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so popular,
yeah.
And it is, but even then, I've never had I've been there 3 times, twice,
yeah.
Something like that. And each time I've been able to have a conversation with my bartender and server with no problem. Look for a tiki bar that has like closed-in areas and that sort of thing, or that has private rooms, like Archipelago does.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a private room. It's a reservation-only space that's only open certain nights. They have limited seating there, and so the number of people that are there is smaller, and it caters to a tiki savvy crowd.
Yeah.
They're serving stuff off of their back menu, which is all tiki classics. But you're right. I mean, a lot of tiki restaurants can be, tiki bars and restaurants can be very loud, very boisterous, especially ones with floor shows. If you've got a tiki Polynesian floor show, yes, it's going to be hard to hear. Come back here. I knew she was going to do that. It's going to be hard to hear your partner next to you. Get cozy, share a drink, buy a communal drink, buy something in a great big pineapple where you have to get close and lean in with the straws.
After COVID.
After COVID, right? All of this is after COVID. Right. Yes. I mean, you can come here and I'll give you a drink on the back patio, but that doesn't help. I don't think. All right, sure, I will. That's really good.
Yeah.
Wow. Apparently they knew what they were doing in the 1870s. They were mixing up good cocktails. Now we're going to leave the 1870s. We are going to jump forward to the 2010s. Yeah, I know, it's a big jump. And we are going to do a drink out of Minimalist Tiki. I know, we've done all of the classic drinks from Minimalist Tiki before, but that was first edition printing of Minimalist Tiki. I now have a third edition, and what Matt Petrick did with the third edition is, rather than give the sort of the classic recipes that you can get anywhere, you can get them from Jeff Beachbum Berry's books, you can get them from his guide online, you can get them from Atomic Grog, I mean, the classic recipes for things like Mai Tais and Suffering Bastards and Scorpions and the rum casks and those sorts of things, they're out there. You can get them. So rather than just providing yet another recitation of those recipes, what he did in the third edition is he provided riffs on those cocktails. And so one of the things that I want to do now is a drink that I did for the first time last night while we were having this Zoom get-together of a bunch of high school friends. And one of my high school friends currently lives in New Orleans, and he had just bought a house, just moved into that house, and Katrina hit. And so, life has been interesting since then. But this was a drink that is based off of the hurricane recipe, and it is called When the Levee Breaks, and it's dedicated to the rebuilding of New Orleans that went on after Katrina. And so I thought I would share that cocktail with you. And it uses Fashionola, and it uses a variety of different fruit juices and the like, but I don't think it's all that. You can still see the connections back to the cocktails that were being done in the 1870s, so it's not that far a stretch, even though it's a much more complex cocktail. So what we're going to do is a cocktail called When the Levee Breaks for you. And this is by Brian Maxwell, as written up in Minimalist Tiki, 3rd edition. Okay, this is actually a blended drink, so there's significant difference here. Obviously, in the 1870s, you did not have blenders. And as a consequence, there were no blended drinks at the time. So we are going to start with 1.5 ounces of Fashionola. Yeah, I know, that's a lot of Fashionola. The previous cocktail, you looked at it and it was brown with this little bit of red at the bottom until I shook it, and then the red of the Fashionola took over. And that's with a teaspoon. So I can only imagine, well, I now know what it looks like because I did it last night. But 3/4 of an ounce, and then another 3/4 of an ounce will give us 1.5 ounces of Fashionola. Thick, syrupy, Hawaiian punch-like substance. And I have to say, the raspberry syrup homemade grenadine workaround is a pretty decent approximation of this stuff. It worked out really pretty well, and I've used up all of that, which is why I'm using up Jonathan English's Fashionola, or using Jonathan English's Fashionola. Once opened, it does need to be refrigerated. It is not shelf stable. So in addition to the Fashionola, we're not done with the sweet component. We are going to go with a spicy component that is also sweet, and that is Velvet Falernum. So we've got cloves and allspice and almond and citrus and something else that I'm totally blanking on in falernum. One of the other things I did this week is I looked up a whole bunch of different recipes for making falernum, and it's really not all that difficult to do, but I have a big bottle of John Taylor's falernum, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. The other thing is John Taylor's falernum lasts a lot longer than the falernums that you would be making at home, and so unless I'm throwing a party and I'm going to be using a ton of falernum, I'm probably not going to be making my own because it just doesn't keep as well. What do we need here? We need 3/4 of an ounce of falernum. There we go, 3/4 of an ounce. Oh, how am I doing, by the way? I got kudos last week for trying to cut down on the number of ums, and I totally forgot this week. Without the preparation, my guess is that I'm saying a lot more this week than I did last week. I'm certainly not as aware of it, but we'll see. So I'll get some feedback from you, hopefully, on that. What else? We need a full ounce of orange juice. This is fresh squeezed orange juice. I squeezed this just before we started. I mean, literally like 10 minutes before we started this. You can tell it's already separating. So orange juice is probably the most perishable of the citrus juices that you can make. So Yeah, use it quick. It will not. It does not really well keep till the next morning, even. Although if you're mixing it with alcohol the next morning, then you probably won't notice. My high school speech and debate coach used to drink what he called Tootsie Rolls, which were orange juice and Kahlua. Fresh orange juice made those drinks. He also used to drink a San Juan Sunrise, which was orange juice, rum, and a dash of grenadine. Unfortunately, John didn't know any better, and he used the Rose's grenadine, so those drinks were really sweet. Here's to you, John. May you look down in favor at the cocktailing that is going on amongst all of the high school students that you taught. Because you taught them many things. Not just social sciences, not just speech and debate. But years after we graduated, you taught us many things. We need a 1 ounce of lemon juice. 1 ounce of lemon juice. So why did I suddenly think of the fact that I was saying a lot? It had nothing to do with my being cognizant of whether or not I was saying I was noticing that I was actually doing a better job of holding my jigger, either down here at the bottom to flip this way and keep it stable, or holding it like this, or like this, or with a thumb up here to keep it stable. I remembered that I was supposed to be working on that, and that cued my brain that I was supposed to be working on something else. What was it? And I almost said, I was supposed to be working on, and then it cued in that the thing I was supposed to be working on was saying, So there you go. There you have it. That's how my brain works. That's how I got there. We need a 1/2 ounce of unaged Jamaican rum. Unaged Jamaican rum. I'm reaching for the Wray and Nephew. I could, if I really wanted to up this, I could go with my Worthy Park, which is it's an expensive rum and is way funkier than the Wray and Nephew. It is still unaged, but the Wray and Nephew sits right here. The Worthy Park is over there. So I'm not going to walk anywhere. I'm going to go ahead and use this. All right, there's a 1/2 ounce. Different Jamaican rums have different funks to them, depending upon where they are distilled and the processes that they use, the fermentation period, the yeasts that are used, whether they use open yeast or naturally occurring yeasts, which most do. The Wray and Nephew is a great rum for having on your bar as just a single white, unaged overproof. Worthy Park is something that is more along the lines of something that you would just pour in a glass and sip on. But it would be glorious in this cocktail. We need 1.5 ounces of a moderately aged, like 8-year-old, something along those lines, rum. And last night when I made this, I reached for my, I think it's Dominican Republic, is that right? My Baku, my 8-year Baku. And it made a fine cocktail, but I wanted something else. I wanted a slightly different note for this cocktail. So I'm actually going to reach for a moderately aged rum agricole instead. And here I'm going to go ahead and use the Duquesne rum agricole, and we're going to go 1.5 ounces of that. This is going to change the cocktail quite a bit from, whoops, sorry, 1.5 ounces. Because it's such a large amount, and the rum agricole is going to have a very different flavor from the Dominican Republic rum. But I did find that the Dominican Republic rum sort of disappeared into the cocktail. There's so much sweetness coming from the Fashionola, and so I want to try it using the Duquesne. Besides, there was no French elements in the cocktail, and French, Creole, New Orleans seem to go together, so yeah, we're going to use the Duquesne French agricole rum. And then we need another 1.5 ounces of an unaged molasses-based rum. White rum, preferably. We have a bottle of Navy strength rum from a local distillery called Cotton and Reed. You may have seen our tasting glasses. And clearly there's some age on it because it has color. There's some color on it, and pretty much if you're coming off of a column still, you would expect that you're going to be largely clear. What did I say? I said 1.5 ounces. Double check. 1.5 ounces? No, yeah, no, it was 1.5 ounces. All right. So once again, we're going to do the 3/4 of an ounce and 3/4 of an ounce. Now, this is Navy strength. I used the Ray and Nephew, which is an overproof rum. So this drink is going to have some real kick to it, which is fine. I'm liking that. There is one other alcohol that's going to go in here, but it gets floated on top. So we're not going to add it quite yet. This gets blended with some crushed ice.
This is really good. I'm going to let you have the end of it because it's so good. I want to share it with you.
Wow. She wants to share this cocktail with me because it's so good. What's up with that? She may be anticipating this next cocktail because she helped me drink the other cocktail yesterday. We're going to just stick this under the blender 5 seconds. And then this just gets poured in a hurricane glass. And I got yelled at. I got told, chastised. Because last night I just poured it into a tiki mug. I did not pour it into a hurricane glass. But I was commenting that it should be in a hurricane glass, and people were, why didn't you pour it into a hurricane glass? I was like, well, I'm not sure where my hurricane glasses are. Do I have a hurricane glass? And so I was like, yes, you have hurricane glasses. Because, okay, occasionally we just want a bad, sickly, sweet cocktail, and we go to places like Red Lobster that have them, and then we come home with their hurricane glasses. This is a hurricane glass. This is the typical shape of a hurricane glass. So we're going to go pour this right in. I'm going to add a little more crushed ice to this. And then what it gets topped with is a bartender's friend. So in the 2000s, I would say 2000s, early 2000s, 2005 or so, it was all the rage for bartenders for you to gift your bartender with a shot of this, or for if the bartender really loved you, you guys would do shots together of this particular liqueur. It is Fernet Branca. It is a bitter aperitif. It is an acquired taste, and what we're going to do is we're going to go 1/2 ounce, and we're just going to float that over the top here. Or we're going to pour it on the top. That is probably going to cause this to overflow, but can't help that, right? Because,
that's why you have bar mats.
Well, it's when the levee breaks, right? So it has to overflow. And I did a cardinal sin here, which is I should have put my straw in first, because now when I put the straw in, it is going to overflow, and that's bad.
No, it won't.
No, it won't, she says. She's going to come along and take a sip. You don't want to take a sip of this because you're going to get Fernet Branca.
Oh, you're right.
So what you're
So
going
you just put the straw in a little ways.
Yeah, as long as it goes in under the Fernet Branca. But you can see where this is kind of getting its color, where it's getting its name from. So you have the French Connection with the agricole. It's this weird reddish color, and then there's the sort of oil slick on top.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stick the straw in here. Once again, another Surfside Sips straw.
Hey, Gwen.
Oh, that's a hurricane. It's very sweet. It is tasty, though.
Yeah. Gwen went with us to New Orleans.
The agricole does add an interesting flavor profile to this. I like this. I need a garnish.
Oh.
So I just took a orange slice, and I stuck a Luxardo cherry in it. Passed a pick through it, and there you go. Ta-da! Vibrant red color from the Fashionola. A little oil slick going across the top. And see, it's in a hurricane glass. I do own them. There you go. What do you think of that, hon? You had one yesterday, so now you can compare.
Ooh.
Yeah, the Rome Agricole, right?
Yeah, yep. This is better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there we go. Once again, We are basing this off of balancing sugar, balance the sweetness of the sugar and the sourness of the citrus. And in this case, the citrus is lemon and a little bit of citrus from coming through from the orange juice, although the orange juice adds a certain sweetness to it. The sweetness is coming from the falernum and from the fasciola, certainly. You get that vibrant red color, which is just gorgeous. The red color is so reminiscent of candy and makes you think of hyper sweet cocktails that I really want to be careful about how much fasciola I use in cocktails. Quite frankly, I think that's at the borderline. An ounce and a half in that cocktail, it really needs the overproof rums to stand up to the sweetness of the fasciola. But it works when you use the overproof rums, and the agricole really does come through, whereas the previous Baku just didn't hold up its end. It was a rum, it was there, but it really wasn't a partner in the flavors. The rum agricole is definitely there and adds a nice back note to it that I really enjoy, and I think that adds a stronger connection to the French Quarter and New Orleans by playing up that French element of the rum agricole. We apparently have a question.
Why are unaged rums an important ingredient?
Why? So an unaged rum is going to have a different flavor profile than an aged rum. They tend to be... Okay, so if it's unaged, there's a mellowing process that occurs when your rum sits in a cask for any length of time. The wood... I've talked to a bunch of people about the aging process in casks, and they all say the same thing, which is you can sort of understand the aging process, but you can't completely understand the aging process in wood. There's a lot of things that go on. The wood is imparting certain flavors to the beverage, the spirit, because the spirit is, of course, alcohol, so it's leaching some out of the barrel. But at the same time, the barrel is acting kind of as a filter over time, and it is leaching some of the harsher flavors out of the distilled spirit. You also can't discount the impact of the aging process on condensing and concentrating the rum, especially if it's a rum that is aged in the tropics. Tropics aging results in a significant loss of liquid and a much higher concentration, much more rapidly, of flavor within the rum or other spirit if you happen to be tropically aging it. So why would you want to have an unaged rum there? Well, because you're looking for that particular harshness. You don't want it to be completely smoothed out by its time in the barrel. You don't want the vanilla notes that often will come from aging in an oak barrel, especially a charred barrel. If you're using first-time oak and you put a char on it, you're also going to get a smoky flavor from the char that will be imparted to the distilled spirit, and in using an unaged spirit, you're not going to get any of that char and smoke flavor from it. So there's multiple things that are going on in the aging process that all change the liquid from one to another. There is also, and don't discount this, the color. If you are dealing with rums that are fresh off the still, those rums are largely going to be crystal clear. Now, we all know that just because a rum has color does not mean it has been aged. It could mean that they've added color back in at the end. So you tend to run into that on the other end of just because it is a clear rum doesn't mean it doesn't have age on it. And that was part of the problem, whereas you saw me sort of fumbling around for a moment because I was like, oh, well, I will grab this. Oh, wait, no, Plantation 3-Star is lightly aged. Oh, well, I'll grab my Havana Club. Oh, wait, Havana Club is a Puerto Rican rum, and I know all Puerto Rican rums by law have to be aged at least a year, so I know it's not that. Oh, let me grab the Diplomatico Platinum. Oh, wait, I know that that's an Añejo, which means it's been aged at least 3 years. So I'm looking around at all my white rums and going, wow, All of my white rums are aged. They've just had the color stripped out of them before going into the bottle.
So
More questions. Excellent. I love questions.
So Pisco is aged in stainless steel tanks. So the
True.
wood is not the only thing involved in the changes in aging.
Right, but the stainless steel tanks are still susceptible to things like evaporation. And so there's concentration of flavor that's going on there. The stainless steel shouldn't have anything to do with flavor, although it should be non-reactive. So you should not be picking up, say, metallic tastes from the fact that you have aged it in stainless steel. At least one would hope. I don't know. I'm not a. I have a bottle of Pisco. Pisco? No, that's Pisco is the really bad stuff. Pisco is the good stuff, right? That's how that works. I have two reasons for having a bottle of Pisco. One, we have friends who took us to a Jose Andre restaurant in DC a number of years back, and this is an Asian Peruvian fusion restaurant, and they served a variety of different Pisco drinks, and I went, wow, these are yummy, I should own some Pisco. The other reason for owning Pisco is because the bottle of Pisco that I have is, I don't even remember who it's from, but it is shaped like an Easter Island head, right? The great big Easter Island monoliths. And so that's just cool and sort of goes with the whole tiki vibe. So of course I had to have a bottle of Pisco for the bar. So there you go. We've now sampled a drink that is essentially straight out of the 1870s. We've sampled a Tikified version of an 1870s drink, and it required very little work to get from the original 1870s to something that would pass in a tiki bar. And also, as it turns out, it's really freaking tasty. And then we changed our pedigree up, and we went with a drink that is from the 2000s, and that is very, very modern, and a modern take on a classic tiki drink, the Hurricane. That is, and you can find that in Matt Petrick's Minimalist Tiki. So that's what I have for you this evening, is when did tiki really begin? Was it the 1930s? Or does it have its origins earlier? Well, certainly I think the cocktails, I think we may have demonstrated that in fact the cocktails have their origins earlier, or at least can trace their histories earlier. The marriage of those cocktails to the fake Polynesian escape experience, though, yeah, that's totally 1930s and beyond. That is not a thing they were doing in the 1870s. They were not dreaming of Polynesia at that point. I can almost guarantee it. What can I tell you? Fashionola. It's not used a lot, and there's no reason, unless you're doing lots of things that are tiki, to own a bottle of Fashionola. But if you are doing lots of tiki things, you know, here you go. Bottle of Fashionola, eBay, it works. The other thing to note is the substitute of the grenadine and raspberry syrup worked really, really well. I mean, it truly did. I gave very much the same essence of this Fashionola syrup. So
this is dangerous.
It is. It does not taste like it is particularly alcoholic, but I will point out, okay, so the Duquesne is harmless. The Duquesne is 40%.
Okay.
Right? So there's an ounce and a half of 40%.
Okay.
But there's an ounce and a half of the, that we use the Cotton and Reed overproof.
Yeah.
Which, so that's 57%. So there's an overproof. There's an ounce. No, there's a, there's an ounce and a half of that. And there's a half ounce of 63%.
So we've got 3.5 ounces?
That would be 3.5 ounces. And only
half
one
of it is
half of that is overproof.
Overproof.
Of at least 57% or better. So yeah, it's it does not taste like it has that much alcohol in it. Oh, not to mention it's got the Fernet Branca, which I don't remember what the percentage is on the Fernet. And this is a reprint of the label, so it's too small for me to tell.
Amanda's in the mood to do New Orleans drinks. FYI, in New Orleans, there are...
Oh, if you want to do New Orleans drinks, so Boulevardier,
yeah,
Sazerac,
Sidecar.
And if you are you feeling the need to get a workout? Does your upper body need a workout?
Ramos Gin Fizz.
Yeah, if you need to get some arm movement here and upper body strength and work on that, the Ramos Gin Fizz. So the story goes, they would have, I think it was like 10 bartender's assistants lined up to do a Ramos Gin Fizz, and they would pass. So you'd have the cocktail shaker. And you'd shake, 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 shake. When you started to get tired, you'd pass it to the next person. It went through 10 people.
It's an egg white.
Yes.
Foam, yeah.
With a fizzy. Yep.
Yeah.
And when I had one, I've only had the one, and oh my gosh, it was amazing.
At the Carousel Bar.
At the Carousel Bar in New Orleans. It was served in this massive glass, and it was just bubbly and fizzy over the top, and it just had this silky texture. Oh, it was so good. And I just don't have the arm strength to do those. So
we had a great time in New Orleans.
Someday I will do a Ramos Gin Fizz for you.
New Orleans, because there's not a Mardi Gras and there's not the floats.
We're gonna pour this over that.
Yay! There are people doing house floats.
Yeah, they're decorating their houses
as if it's a float, and so you can drive around the area.
Because I guess New Orleans is kind of going nuts with not being able to do the whole Mardi Gras thing.
And I want to give a shout out to our friend John, who was king of King Arthur Court crew this year. And there's no float, so next year he shares his kingdom with the next year's. John and I were friends when we were 7.
He's known her longer than I have.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Our parents were racing buddies. So, yeah. Surely there's a cocktail shaking machine out there somewhere. Oh, and Amanda says Sazerac is next on our list. Oh, you didn't show off your... Oh, you showed it off, but now you have absinthe in it. So, for Sazerac.
Right. So, dear Amanda, for the Sazerac, it is typical to pour a little absinthe into the glass that you are going to serve it in, and then twirl the glass in order to coat the inside of the glass with absinthe. So there are any number of ways of doing this, and there are any number of people that will wax poetic about what the proper way to do it is. The hugely artistic way is to pour some absinthe into the glass, take the glass between your hands, and spin it up in the air. And have it come down, and it'll coat the inside of the glass.
It looks really nice when done well. It looks
really amazing.
Yeah.
It looks really cool until you miss. And then it doesn't look so cool. It looks pretty lame, in fact. And then you've spilled absinthe. Your whole bar smells like absinthe, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. A different way of doing that, of getting the coating on the interior of your glass with your absinthe, would be to take a rocks glass. Okay, this is a double rocks glass, but taking a rocks glass and taking a mister of some sort that has absinthe in it, and you can just take your glass and do that. I need to prime this first of all. Just like that. And instantly, I've got a nicely coated interior glass. Pretty evenly dispersed, too. It is. It really is. And look at the smell of that. Isn't that awesome? Oh. Yeah, that smells so good. Yeah. Yep. Amanda says that she will be one of the 10 in line for you to make a Ramos Gin Fizz. Yeah, I don't think it actually is going to require 10, but yes. So at some party, we'll do Ramos Gin Fizzes, and we'll just have the guests lined up to shake them. Yeah, I will do some investigation and maybe some experimentation and see just how much of that is myth and how much of that is truth, with regard to how much arm strength and how much shaking is required to get a true fizz on that. I mean, you really want bubbles piled upon bubbles piled upon bubbles. Yeah. I hear tell that you can do a quality imitation of a handshaken Ramos Gin Fizz using a blender. So we may have to play around with that. I know as well. Gwen has her first shot. Surely Gwen has had a shot before. No, COVID. Shot. Oh, right. Surely Gwen, you've had shots before. Yeah, I know, because she's been with us. Because we're enablers. So, as our friends get shots and the weather gets a little warmer, we'll start doing some backyard cocktails. Because apparently it's not getting any colder. Yeah. Okay, there is some small chance that we're going to actually get a little snow later in the week. I'm having my spring allergy attack. You know, we've gone on for it's an hour and a
An
half.
hour and a half.
An hour and a
Oh,
half.
we should shut up.
No, it's really cute because you're starting to lisp.
I am. I'm intoxicated. Or as Anne would say, pixelated.
Pixelated, yes. I have to figure out what I'm going to do with this glass that now has a nice spritz of absinthe in it. So we will talk to you guys later. We have had a ton of fun doing this week.
We have. Thank you for indulging us. We really have a lot of fun doing this. And the fact that people are watching gives us an excuse to do this.
Yeah, that does.
Pretty much.
And, you know, I will say the same thing I try and say every week, which is if you enjoy this, please like the page, like the broadcast. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like about it. So we'll talk to you later. We'll talk to you next week. Have fun. Keep drinking. But do so in moderation. Unlike my wife. Yep. All right. We'll talk to you later. Adios. Bye-bye. This is Lovecraft Cocktails signing out for another week.